All right. Hello. It's me, Natalie. Look at me. I've been painting today and cleaning behind our barn here. Spring cleaning. It's 86 degrees. I'm always a filthy mess. I'm behind Barnway. I'm the Good Shepherd here. My name is Natalie, and on our small hobby farm. Everybody's quiet for this afternoon. It's before dinner time, and that's usually the best time for me. Like when I was raising my daughters like humans. Well, I don't know. That was usually also the best time, because then right at dinner time, whoa, it just gets crazy. So I've been reading one chapter a day. This book, Belonging to Life, the chapters are bizarrely long, and there's no way I even have time to sit here and read for an hour or an hour and a half. So I've been breaking it down. So today I'm going to read, and I upload all this to my social media under the playlist title of the book, Belonging to Life. And it's in there. Chapter 1, Part 1, Chapter 2, Part 1, Chapter 2, Part 2, Chapter 2, Part 3. This is going to be Chapter 3, and I think there's going to be 4. Not chapters. 4 parts to Chapter 2. There, let's do it. So in Part 2, we talked about seeing the senses, how important they are, the 5 senses that we're all pretty much born with. And we read about seeing and touching, and today we're going to dive into finishing up talking about listening, tasting, and smelling. So there's the 5 senses, very important: sight, taste, sound, smell, touch. We're going to go into listening, which is the sound part of it. When we were very young, we lived inside of a symphony. The trilling flute of a bird song vibrated within us and was as fascinating as the percussion of a slamming door. We didn't just hear with our ears, we heard with our whole being. We lived in a world of music, every sound and note in the tapestry of life. Everything had its own song: our house, the trees in our yard, the fly on the windowsill. As we began to contain ourselves and become guarded towards life, we closed off, placing filters over our experience of hearing. On some level, this closing off is necessary in our extremely noisy society. We hear more new sounds in a year of our lives than our grandparents heard in their entire existence. I do know I started this part yesterday, but my roosters got crazy. It was mayhem, so I'm just restarting with the listening for anybody who is reading, following along. Oh, goodness. We can understand sound when we comprehend that it is energy in motion. The universe is vibration. Absolutely everything, from every single cell to your whole body, and even the earth itself, has a frequency at which it vibrates. Whether it is the sound of a bee or the clarion call of a trumpet, we can hear these vibrations because the atoms and molecules that comprise them are moving to and fro. Once you start listening to life, you see that the earth is a world of rhythms, ratios, relationships, and harmonies that create everything from the number of petals on a flower to the mathematical precision of Earth's dance around the sun. We have called upon these same mathematical laws of nature to create the music we play in great concert halls, over the radio waves, and in all homes around the world. Our ears hear only a minuscule portion of this vast vibrating world we live in. The sounds that we do hear are an exquisite translation of air molecules into perception. It begins with the vibration of an object, such as the movement of a person's vocal cords. Air molecules that are moved in this process come crashing like waves upon our eardrums. These wonderful membranes vibrate like ancient tribal drums. This awakens a series of tiny bones that press against the fluid of the inner ear. In this inner sanctum, there are tiny hairs that awaken the auditory nerve cells, which then send this information to the brain. What a wondrous process this is of transforming airwaves into liquid waves, into electrical impulses, and finally into perception. Sound can be a magical invitation back into life. When I was first awakening, going into my body was too terrifying for me, but listening was a place where I could anchor. To turn away from the struggling mind and to keenly listen would bring a thrill throughout my body. This is it, awareness would say. I'm eavesdropping on my own life. Another thrill would run through my being as I realized that every sound I was hearing was totally unique. Really listening to my life evokes within me the peace of childhood. One memory is of being put to bed before the rest of the neighborhood had quieted down for the night. I felt such contentment in simply listening to life unfolding, both in my own home and in the neighborhood. In those moments, I was fully being with life. The song of birds is another sound that brings me back to the present. Once when I was speaking to an auditorium full of people, my mind busy with what I was saying, my ears picked up a distant bird song, and suddenly I was back in the living moment. I have also found myself walking through parking garages deep in the maze of a city, and a far-off trill would awaken me again. Birds constantly remind me to reconnect all of my being with the preciousness and uniqueness of the living moment. The joy of consciously opening to the ever-changing river of sound is almost incomprehensible. From every point in space, the river of sound arises out of mystery and melts back again in an amazing and continuous symphony. We can use sound to connect with life throughout our day. When we tune in, deeply listening, we immediately enter the living moment of our lives. Ooh, I'm all excited there. Let's move on to the sense of tasting. Eating is something all of us do many times every day, but rarely do we really taste. Most of us inhale our food, getting ready to shovel in the next mouthful before we've even finished chewing the last. Or we are preoccupied in conversation, TV, or reading while eating. We are lost to the sensual wonder of food, cut off from the living experience of this gift. As a result, we are a society that lives on antacids, laxatives, and pain relievers. One of the most essential parts of the digestive process is to recognize, to really see what we are going to eat. This allows us not only to eat wisely, but also to create a very healing relationship with this food that is going to become a part of ourselves. This is why saying grace has been around for centuries. True grace is a grateful recognition of the gift that life is giving you. With Kirlian photography, the ability to photograph energy patterns, we have been able to compare the energy patterns of food that has been blessed and food that hasn't. This simple action of seeing and giving thanks literally transforms the energy of the food. What? Rather than eating unconsciously, we can use chewing and tasting as a place for grounding and remembering the miraculous process we are a part of, and as a place for cultivating deep gratitude for the gift of life. All right, moving on to smelling. Oh, one more. In becoming present when you are eating, be curious about what your mind does with the invitation. My mind was so used to going unconscious around food that at one time my resistance to being present felt insurmountable. I then began to war with this resistance, demanding that I be present when I was eating, but that only removed me further from the process. When I stopped fighting the resistance, I could allow myself to be present for one bite. It was okay if my mind wanted to space out for the rest of the meal. I would at least give myself the gift of one bite with awareness. Sometimes that one bite invited me into a meal of awareness, and sometimes not. But those few bites with awareness have transformed my relationship with food and with my life. The wonderful thing about eating is that we do it often throughout the day. In each experience of partaking of the wonder and mystery of food, we can awaken our senses and clear a pathway back into life. Now we'll go on to smelling. Smelling is the stepchild of the senses. This hasn't always been so. When our ancestors lived on all fours, it was one of their predominant feedback systems. When they learned how to stand, sight then took over. We don't create artwork or symphonies for the activation of smell, but smells surround and caress us every moment of our lives. Smells such as sheets hung to dry in the sun or bread baking in the oven evoke warm feelings, while the smell of decaying garbage or the nauseous odor of strong chemicals contract us into disgust and withdrawal. Smells can also move us to distant memories and powerful emotions, almost faster than any other sense. We breathe thousands of times during the day, each breath bringing us molecules that were once a part of everything in our environment. When they float back into the nasal cavity on the breeze of our breath, they are absorbed by the mucosa, which contains over 5 million cells. These cells trigger the olfactory nerve, sending a message to a part of the brain called the olfactory lobe. In many animals, this lobe is very large, but in human beings, because smell is not usually a necessity for survival, it is relatively small. From the olfactory lobe, these nerve impulses travel to the cerebrum, where they are translated into information about the odor. Smell can be the sense that is the hardest to use for grounding because much of the time it seems like there is nothing to smell. Animals know life differently. They know that everything radiates a smell, not only objects and beings, but emotions like fear and anger. My rooster knows that my husband hates him. My rooster knows this. And my husband travels a lot for work. When my husband is here, my rooster cock-a-doodle-doos all night. He sleeps with me, by the way, my rooster. So it's amazing. He knows, he feels the energy of my husband. Like, he's like, oh. To reconnect with the joy of smelling, we have to begin with the most basic of smells. Be willing to be a smell detective. Fully take in the rich aroma of coffee, the joyful scent of newly mown grass, or the sweet fragrance of chocolate. Smell your skin and that of your lover. If you have a friend to play with, take turns blindfolding one another and bringing different objects to experience just by the sense of smell. The senses are a pathway that we can return to over and over when we discover ourselves lost in the maze of the mind. It is important to recognize that the senses are a pathway, not a destination. They are useful in that they help us edit and divide life into digestible parts, but they can take us only so far in the opening into who we really are, because they don't accurately perceive all that is really going on. The world we perceive is but a creation that our mind builds out of these little bits and pieces, and the information we receive is a minuscule amount of what is really going on. This book you're holding is nothing but a vast dance of energy, and yet your senses say it is solid. We see only a small band of the light that is present and hear only a fraction of the symphony of sound vibrations. This makes our one view out of the vast area of possible views rather limited and simplistic, considering how complex life really is. Even though our view is limited, to use our senses to come, for moments, out of the maze of thought, connecting with the mystery of the living moment, is to stand at a doorway. This is a doorway to the magical reality that we live in all of the time. And it is just beyond the boundaries of our everyday thinking. We have time. I'm going to go ahead and start on the next part of chapter 2. We're still on part 3. About breath. And I think this is a long part too, so let's see how far we can get since the flock is so quiet. Breath. Breathe. Let go. And remind yourself that this very moment is the only one you know you have for sure. Oprah Winfrey. Besides making friends with our bodies and reconnecting with our senses, another very skillful way to ground in the living moment is to reconnect with the sensations of breath. This wonderful rhythm is always happening in the living moment, 15 to 20 times every single minute. We have been alive. The breath has been flowing in and out of our body. This is around 8 to 10 million breaths a year. How many of those breaths have we even been aware of? Probably very few. The depth to which we are cut off from connection with our breath is the depth to which we are cut off from life. To experience this ancient river that is always moving through us and to reconnect with it many times throughout our day gives us a sanctuary, a place to rest from the ever-struggling mind. To breathe is to live. We can survive a month or more without food and a number of days without water, but only a few minutes without breath. It is the great animator of life. From our very first in-breath until the last and final exhale, life is a continuous river of breath on which the experiences of our lives are hung. This river was breathing us when we learned to walk and on our first day of school. It was also present when we fought with our parents, fell in love, or had our heart broken. When we're driving, the people in the cars passing by are being breathed by this process, just as each person who is committing a violent act or feeding the homeless is also connected with this river. The same flow of breath that is moving through you as you sit here reading this book has recently been a part of maple trees, eagles, and butterflies, and eons ago moved through dinosaurs, mastodons, and saber-toothed tigers. It is fascinating to watch a young child breathe. As their belly rises and falls, there is no holding, no glitches in this wondrously rhythmic river. We once breathed like that, but as events in our lives confused, frightened, and overwhelmed us, we began to hold our breath. Learning to be wary of life, of our feelings, we pulled our breath up and out of our belly and into the upper regions of our body. As the breath became more shallow, our center of consciousness rested more in the intellect and will, cutting us off from a sense of stability and the great unity that we are a part of. To reconnect with an open breath is an amazing thing. When we take a full in-breath, it fills us with both visible and invisible energies. There is no accident. It is called inspiration. To exhale completely is to ride the waves of letting go, trusting ourselves to the living process of life. Breathing fully is the master healer of most of what ails the body. It allows us to access not only a vibrant vitality, but also a connection with our primal unity with all of life. To breathe fully is to be fully alive. Also, with every breath, we are connected to the whole of creation. Every time we breathe in, we take in trillions of atoms that were once a part of Shakespeare's pen, dinosaurs, stars, rainbows, Jesus, mountains, and oceans. When we breathe out, we send on their way particles that were once an integral part of our own being, letting them go to a life of infinite adventure. Let us now connect with our breath on this level. There are 4 gifts of breath. There are 4 ways that breath can create a sense of ease and centeredness throughout our being. The first is purely on the physical. Our cells need 2 molecules of oxygen to every 1 molecule of glucose for fuel. A cell is much like a fire. If you want it to burn more brightly, you open the vents to more oxygen. As our supply of this life-giving fuel becomes more scarce through shallow breathing, the efficiency of our cells lessens dramatically, lowering vitality and creating many more waste products. A well-fed fire leaves very little ash. A smoldering fire without enough oxygen to fuel it leaves much debris. We live in a sea of inefficiently fueled cells and thus inefficient energy. We are a society of shallow breathers, and yet we wonder why we need caffeine to get us going. To breathe fully is to revitalize, cleanse, and nourish our bodies, creating a much purer bloodstream that bathes every cell of our being. The breath is also the great internal exerciser. Each full breath gently massages and kneads our organs, stimulating a river of circulation in blood, lymph, and intercellular fluids, facilitating nutrition and elimination. Breath's very simplicity has caused it to be bypassed in our Western medicine. We spend thousands of dollars and countless hours on doctors and complicated systems of healing. All the while, the gift of deep breathing is waiting to be discovered. To breathe deeply every day is to access a level of health we may not have known for a long time. The second powerful way that breath affects us happens in the nervous system. This awesome communication network needs pure fuel in order to function at its peak. Remember how fuzzy your thinking is after being cooped up in a stuffy room for a while. The part of the nervous system that is in charge of all that is automatically happening in our bodies is called the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system. We do not need to think in order for our heart to beat or for our glands to perform their wizardry. This system has 2 halves, the first being the sympathetic. This is the, oh my God, a tiger place where the heart starts beating quickly, the adrenal glands kick in, and blood is shunted to the muscles for flight. When the threat is gone, the upper half of this exquisite system, the parasympathetic, takes over, calming and reversing the fight or flight response. The difficulty we are faced with is that we live in a society that is addicted to the sympathetic nervous system. We love scary or violent movies. We live our lives at breakneck speeds, and we ingest coffee and sugar to whip up our body. To keep the sympathetic nervous system on, even at a subtle level, it is deeply wearing on our bodies and is a death blow to our hearts. The Chinese character for busy is made up of 2 characters, heart and dead. The balanced rhythm of doing and being, of fast and slow, of rest and work, is broken by our love affair with the adrenaline of the sympathetic nervous system. To breathe deeply is one of the most skillful ways to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system with all of the ease and peace that it brings. The third gift of deep, intentional breathing relates to a truth that shows up in many of the world's religions and healing systems. It is the understanding that breath is made up of more than physical components. Many words are used to describe this essence of breath. prana, chai, ki, nam, to name a few. It is understood that this force is in all forms of matter, although it is not matter, and it is taken in with every breath. Research done with respect to Tai Chi, meditation, and Qi Kung masters has shown that this energy can not only greatly empower a person, but can heal. To breathe normally is to receive some of this energy, but to breathe consciously, deeply, and rhythmically is to replenish and store this vital substance. The final way that free-flowing breath can transform is in reconnecting us to the center of power that resides in our bellies. When we were very young, our center of gravity was in the pelvic region. This allowed us to move freely and with balance, dancing our way through our lives. We hadn't yet pulled ourselves up into the upper regions of the body where we learned to rely solely upon will and intellect to maneuver through our lives. Even though the mind has allowed us to do amazing things, to be caught in our head ensnares us in a web of concepts that cut us off from a source of intelligence, wisdom, and empowerment that is always with us. Many different systems of healing, along with a variety of religions from various countries, all agree that it is life-affirming to cultivate the power center that resides in the belly. People in the Far East have called this center Hara or Ten Tien and have known about it for thousands of years. This place of power resides a few inches below the belly button. To breathe into this region is to again awaken and reweave our connection with an intelligence that is much greater than our struggling minds. I was once told a story about a Zen archery master who had a bow that was so heavy very few people could lift it, let alone pull it back. To demonstrate the power of acting from the Hera, he brought it to his shoulder as if he were lifting a feather, and when he pulled back on the string, he asked his students to feel the tension in his arms. Much to their amazement, there was very little. He then explained that he had used the power from his belly to draw the bow. Much more can be accomplished in our lives when we access this source of power in our bellies rather than trying to maneuver through our lives with just our minds. Giving ourselves super fuel, calming and centering the nervous system, accessing a source of healing and energy, and breathing ourselves back into center are all accomplished through deep belly breathing. The diaphragm is the key to a deep breath. Because we usually only breathe in the upper half of the body, we rarely engage this muscle, which was intended to be the main engine of breath. The diaphragm muscle is a dome-like sheet that dissects the entire body in the midsection. It is the roof of the abdominal cavity, with all of its organs of digestion, and it is the basement of the thoracic cavity, with its heart and lungs. For most of us, this muscle has fallen asleep, hardly moving with each breath. It needs to be reawakened. When we experience a full breath, the diaphragm descends into the abdominal cavity, pushing the contents down and out in order to make room for the expansion of the lungs. To know a fully alive and vital breath, we need to reawaken this sleeping giant. It is an art that is best cultivated on a daily basis. The rewards far outweigh the time and patience required to invite the muscles and nervous system back into the natural breath we knew as infants. At the beginning, it will seem somewhat alien and possibly a little forced. But it is like the process of cleaning and oiling a severely rusted hinge. Fairly soon, the resistance from corrosion is removed, and the hinge flows easily back and forth. In the same way, you will eventually find that taking a shallow breath requires more energy than resting in a full and open breath. I'm going to go ahead and stop right there because I can't even tell. This is like crazy how long these chapters are. Okay, well, it ends right here. So this is part 3 that I just finished right now. And tomorrow will be part 4, and I think I'll be able to finish it up tomorrow, hopefully. Belonging to Life, Mary O'Malley. Thank you for anyone who joined in on this. What? Does my voice put you to sleep? Does it calm you, soothe you? Does it make sense? Do I talk too fast? Let me know.